Hello, Irish fans, and welcome to another edition of Dome and Domer. My name is Mike Brammer. Joining me tonight, special guest and former guest, Chris Travers, 1990 Dillon Hall roommate. Chris, thanks for coming. It's really nice of you to do this on short notice. Awesome.
Mike, it's a pleasure. I wish I had the background that you got there. I'm not sure what planet it is. It looks like
You'll get to be a pro at this after one of these episodes.
Field goal against Utah or
yeah, exactly.
Alabama maybe.
No, it's a game earlier this year at home. I'm trying to think who that is actually.
That might actually, well, it's not Stanford and it's not Marshall. It feels like it might be a loss somehow, but I'm not sure who that might be.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, there were two big ones this year. So.
Right.
But anyways,
I'm sure we'll get around to talk.
We'll get to it. But what's kind of interesting, Chris, I kind of feel like the USC game was almost like a microcosm of the state of the program at the moment. And here's my thinking on that. I mean, just imagine this. You've got Pine going, what was he, 23 at 26? I mean, I don't know what it was. It was something ridiculous. He was 15. He was 15 and 15 at one point. He's 23 at 26, 300 some yards.
Yeah.
But one huge, massive mistake. I mean, if he doesn't fumble that exchange, we probably
don't change the complexion.
Yeah, we punch it in. We're probably down 3, and I think the whole game changes. But you give Caleb Williams 2 scores, and he's going to he's just going to run freely. He's going to do what he wants. And so I really felt like that was hurting it. But anyways, back to my original point. Here we are. A guy turns in that kind of game, that kind of performance, and he's entering the transfer portal. I mean, he's out the door.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is if you really break down why that's the case, I personally actually think it makes sense. I mean, I hate to say it, but I just think that Pine is a hell of a number 2 type guy. He unfortunately isn't the playmaker that playoff bound teams need in order to compete, and he just isn't that guy. I hate to say it, but that's just my gut instinct. I love the kid to death. He's a tough kid. He's the kind of kid you want on your team. But when it's all said and done, when you're trying to build an offense around that particular position, it just puts you in a tight spot. And I think that the Irish coaching staff was just honest with him,
I don't hate, when you say I hate to say it, but, I don't hate to say it. And I think he already kind of knows that. He's the type of player that I think any sane Notre Dame fan would have been appreciative to have had, but also at the same time, not terribly sad to see go. Okay, because of the things that you mentioned, that we need an upgrade at the position in order to be able to rightfully feel that we've got a shot at the playoffs, which is still kind of the ceiling, which I hope that we do get to, as far as just taking a look at the state of the union of the program and what realistic expectations can and or should be. But Drew Pine is a good guy to have around on your roster for the very reason that he was there for this year, that your first guy, who was experimental at best, by the way, didn't quite work out, whether it be through injury or lack of production, and you plugged and play with Pine, and he did a great job. He was absolutely sensational against North Carolina. And that type of performance is the type of performance that you can actually win a playoff game, the type of accuracy that he put on display.
He did. Yep, he did.
But you're right. He's not going to be able to be the guy that's going to actually hold the torch and be good enough to beat a playoff caliber team, let alone win the whole thing.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point. And back to your point you just made about Buckner. I mean, I think, boy, talk about a one game scenario for him. But if he does, in fact, start in the bowl game, and boy, he's going to have to make a real heck of an impression. Now, I happened to watch the press conference that Tommy Rees gave just a couple of days ago. It was really interesting what he said. And to be honest with you, Chris, I mean, I have experience playing quarterback at the high school level.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was
Interhall, if that counts.
And Interhall, and that does count. That's another step up. But it was in the Interhall where I figured this out, and that was how to read defenses. I could do like one read and my second read in high school. But what I couldn't do is I couldn't drop back and see the whole field and then do it until towards the end of the season at Dillon Hall. I finally figured that out. Now, Tommy Rees said that he felt like Buckner really gained some knowledge by sitting up there in the press conference with him, analyzing the game from that perspective, because every single
I think you mean
snap.
the press box,
Press
right?
box, yeah, I'm sorry, press box.
Okay.
Because you're seeing the entire field, and it kind of forces you to think that way. You know what I mean? Like, the reason Brady and these guys are so damn good is when the ball snapped to them and they're dropping back, they're looking at all the defensive players, seeing where they're going, and then they go to their guy. You see what I mean? Like, they're not looking at, okay, I'm gonna look at this guy first. If he's open, I'm throwing it to it. But if he's not open, I'm gonna try my second guy. No. The really good quarterbacks, yeah, they drop back, they look at the whole entire field, and they say, "What are you giving me? Okay, if that's what you're giving me, I'm gonna throw it to the outlet."
Yeah.
And it's obvious on film this year where Pine missed a few of those. He threw into double coverage down the middle to Mayer because I might as well throw it near the guy.
He's Mayer.
Yeah, he might pull it down anyway because he's that kind of guy. But if you're dropping back and the defense is backing up and the outside backers are backing up and they're giving you that dump, well, then give it to Diggs. Let him get 5, 7. Maybe he misses a tackle and he gets 10. Right. You got to take what the defense gives you, and I just don't think that we were getting that with. And so it'll be interesting to see if Buckner does, because I don't think he was seeing the whole field in the first couple games. And I think they knew that, and I think they went with what they could go with. But again, Buckner's going to have to do that if he wants to solidify that position and play it and get us to a playoff bound.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I could say on that, to be brief, and I don't want to get too much inside baseball here because we're not there behind closed doors.
Exactly.
I recognize that, okay, if Buckner had a problem going through the progressions rapidly and efficiently and having the game slow down, as they like to say, fine. I also recognize that at times, certainly last year at this time, and what we saw earlier on in the season, to me, this is the kind of thing I hate to say, but, like, it's true. He knows this. If he's honest with himself, he's got to confront it. He looked like Nuke from Bull Durham at times. He was that wild. And when somebody is that wild, I wonder if it's just like a tweaking or an overhaul that needs to take place. And if it's just accuracy that we're demanding from him that he's just not going to be capable of no matter how long he's at Notre Dame. So that, to me, remains to be seen.
Yeah. And I think that, look, he's going to have a good game, and he's going to have a great spring, but he's going to have a ton of competition, which is what you want. And staying on the quarterback position, I do like the kid from Pittsburgh that we stole. I watched film on him. He's a talent. So there is some real pressure coming on campus next year, because he's a guy that can compete. I would love to get him a year to where he could sit back and just learn everything and redshirt him. But who knows what's going to happen, especially if we get a transfer. I assume that's going to happen. I don't know about you, but I think for sure we're targeting at least the transfer QB at the moment. I got to believe it.
The kid from North Carolina is one to keep an eye on, from what I read on recruiting message boards.
Really?
Yes. I can't remember his name, like Drake Mayer or something.
Mayer, right?
He didn't have a wonderful game against us, but he wasn't terrible either.
No, but he's a stud. He's a real deal.
Yeah, he is. And, we'll see what happens. But, yes, absolutely. The quarterback room needs some butts in the seats. And you don't look, and I'm not trying to hijack this conversation. I certainly don't want to hijack the conversation to be able to take it over to our most natural enemy that exists, but Michigan for a second. Michigan has a quarterback right now that's good enough to win the whole thing. And I believe that they actually will, unfortunately. Again, I don't want to talk about that too much at length because it kind of turns my stomach. But what he has is not a I set the world on fire moxie about him. I have enough accuracy. I certainly have enough athleticism. If the play breaks down, I can throw a little bit on the move. I can throw just enough. I can throw just deep enough to be able to get you to respect that. And that's what Notre Dame needs. You don't necessarily need the next Trevor Lawrence, but you do need somebody that says, okay, we really need 7 points here and not 3. Once every, say, 3 possessions, I can get you that.
Yep.
And, that can put up 250 to 300 yards without needing 40 passes to do so.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because you really, as a competitive program, you need a guy that can put up almost 300 yards a game. You need it. You can't be doing it with. So, I know everybody keeps talking about Pine being number 20 in the nation in efficiency quarterback rating, but we also were like over
That's their
100 in the country in offensive passing.
Yeah.
And so that's a problem. I mean, you can't be good effectively and compete for playoff positioning when you're the number 100th offense passing in the country. That ain't going to work.
So how about let's shift to that, to the playoffs, and what is it that your realistic kind of ceiling of the program is? Is it really winning a championship? And if so, draw me a roadmap and how to get there. And if it's not, then convince me that people should be happier with, say, the playoffs once every, say, 2 or 3 or 4 years. And I'm talking the 4-team playoff, like one of the top 4 teams, because now we're going to be expanding to 12 teams. And if it's going to be an expansion to 12 teams, what is it that Notre Dame can really honestly go into the season and legitimately hope for and or expect?
Well, I do think there's a chance for us to win the national championship. And I think that's why I don't think it was with Brian Kelly. I mean, no harm, no foul against him. I like Brian Kelly. He did a hell of a job. He definitely built a program, and even though we were in some dark days in 2016, he got us out of it. And I mean, he supplanted us.
Can I just make a quick comparison here? I'm going to hand it right back to you after I plant a little seed of a thought with you. The way that I had hoped that this Kelly to Freeman transition took place, which I understand is obviously only a year old, and we can give Freeman his end of season grades and Rees as well, and Golden or whatever. Okay. But the way that I had hoped that this is going to turn out, and still do, that you remember the Golden State Warriors of, say, what was it, 2013-ish, 2012, 13. Mark Jackson was then the coach at the Warriors. And then he brought them out of the basement and made them a playoff team, not a championship contender, but a playoff team, got them to the quote-unquote next level. Then when they made the switch to Kerr, which I think was, 2015, give or take, right around there. At some point after a couple of years, they decided to move on from Jackson. They handed the reins over to Kerr, and Kerr took them to that championship level. So I had hoped that Brian Kelly, who was an expert at winning the games he should, he needs credit for that. And that's why he's the winningest coach of all time, by the way. He won all the games that he should win, with the exception of tops a handful over 11 years or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And by the way, Freeman has shown a little bit of a vulnerability to win the games that he should, i.e. Stanford, Marshall, right? Okay, we're not blaming him for Ohio State. We're giving him certainly a pass for USC. Okay, but those 2 other ones that I mentioned were the games that we don't want to have to lose. But Kelly won the games that he should, where he struggled with the games that he shouldn't win.
That's right.
Okay, the Florida State in 2014, the Clemson in 2015, the Miami in 2017, and then certainly the playoffs going on. So that's where I was hoping, and still am, that Freeman can break through, a la Steve Kerr, okay, and take us to that next level. So give me your thoughts on that.
I do think so. And I think, to your point on the Marshall and the Stanford loss, I mean, I think we knew we were going to have that this year. And the reason is you can't just walk into college football and be a head football coach at a Power 5 program and win 10, 11 games without any hiccups. It's just, if it were that simple, then guys wouldn't be paid the way that they are. So we knew that was going to happen. We knew that Freeman was going to lose probably 1 or 2 games that he shouldn't, because he's a brand new coach. And there's a couple of things that I think, again,
but is that the only reason that we lost?
No, I don't think that's the only reason, but I think a good coach avoids that loss because he sees what's going on in the game, makes in-game adjustments because of the way guys are playing. You know what I mean? Like, it's things that you see as a head coach. And this is why, back to my original point on USC being a microcosm of the program, there were 2 plays in that stood out to me where Freeman, I think, could have made a difference. One of them was the second time Caleb Williams punted the football.
Yeah,
so you'd already seen it happen once. The second time he did the quick kick, you actually had your punt returner back there.
He was.
Why not gamble? I mean, even the announcers made reference to it. There was one guy to beat. Now, he may not have scored a touchdown, but he definitely is flipping the field. He was getting to the 50-yard line for sure if Brandon doesn't wave that.
Fair catch.
Yeah, exactly. The second one, and this to me was the more
Notre
disappointing.
Dame, by the way, has had fair catch-itis ever since about 2006.
Yeah, when they fumbled
Golden
one and
Tate
cost
was
them
the
the
fair
game.
catch
Yeah,
all the time.
yeah, I
Kelly's
agree.
never let anybody
Now, Brandon, I thought
within a zip code.
he did a great job this year. He got like 5 to 10 yards. He did. He really did. So all the more reason why I think you can gamble. And again, another opportunity.
Have been loosened.
Yes. The second play that I was probably more disappointed in, and I hope I'm not giving away something here in the bowl game, so slap me down if I am, but I thought we had a huge opportunity on that Mitch Palooza play that we always run. You've run it 6 times in a row. Why not fake the quarterback sneak and go wide and just get the first down or maybe even a touchdown? If anything, USC.
Wait. You're saying for the tight end that comes in to run the quarterback sneak,
yeah,
throw the ball.
Yeah, to actually play action off of it. Something, just anything other than a quarterback sneak, because you're
assuming that he can throw.
Well, he's a former quarterback, so I would hope he can throw.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, no, he was. He's a former quarterback. Yeah. So, anyways, again,
that's a good idea. I'd like to see that.
I mean, if he truly is a former quarterback, I can't understand why we didn't have a play ready for that. If he can't throw the football, maybe things have changed and he's got fat fingers now. Maybe you're right. Then okay, that kind. But even still, why not? You've got Pine.
Show it to him. Make him think about it because
you got Pine in the backfield. Why not flip it to Pine and let him throw it?
I'll give you the scenario that you and I think would both like to see it under. How about say 3rd and 1 against quality competition where you run that play where they think it's the quarterback sneak in order to avoid 4th down. Not necessarily on 4th down. You run that play, you waste it, then you come back and you got to run something else. But at least you showed them that we can do. We've actually scripted something. We ran it. It may not have burned you, but you got to think about this the next time we line up in this type of formation. Not a bad idea.
At the time, I just think that had we gotten that first down again, another huge momentum shift. Had we gotten that first down, but anyways, but back to the original point. I mean, I think that Freeman
point.
What's that?
The microcosm point?
Yeah. Well, no, back to Freeman. In terms of him as a head coach, I do think he gets through this season. He learns a lot. I think he'll stop going for it as much instead of taking the 3 points. I think when you're the better team and you got the better talent, you got to take the 3 points and early on in the game because it just means so much when you're putting points on the board. You can't continually go down the field, get in scoring position, and walk away with a goose egg. It's not fair to your team. You can't put them in that position when they're the better football team. But what he has been able to do is he's been able to recruit, and he's done it. And I think if he continues with what he's doing, man, it's hard to believe that he isn't going to do better than Brian Kelly and ultimately get us to that championship game. And then it becomes, all right, is he the kind of guy that can rally the troops? I think he is. I don't know why, but I do think he is. I think he's that quarterback playmaker with one other guy. He gets 2 5-star playmakers on the offensive side and look out.
Yes. Okay, that's fine. Okay, before we run to the recruiting, which I really would like to spend a minute there, which I think we will, what's your just overall season grade that you give?
I give him a B minus.
I would give the exact same thing.
I think he's
different reasons from what it is that you're stating right now in the reindeer games that he participated in that I think some of which were avoidable. And some of which that I was pleasantly surprised that we were able to kind of turn around. I think that he and his voice and what it is that he's imparting to the group is welcomed. They appreciate what it is that he's saying about them. I think that he is good enough in accountability, although I'm very much in favor of what it is that I'm hearing coming from Deion Sanders and out of his mouth as far as the messaging that he is permeating within his locker room. I know that that's not Marcus Freeman's style, and I'm okay with his style as long as the players are still respecting it and they feel that there's consequence to what it is that they're doing, whether it be trying to avoid the negative or trying to actually build the positive and bring the championship home. And right. But I think that in some ways he has hemorrhaged some recruits. So this isn't again to transition into the recruiting, but we lost an extremely important piece to any possible quality defense in what's his name, Keon Keeley. Okay, the weak side defensive end. Yep. Peyton Bowen is very much at best a coin flip at this point at another key position, that being safety. He'd come in and start probably by the second half of the first game. If we don't have world-beating linebackers on the field next year, then I'm not sure what we can possibly say about the recruiting, because that's been the best position over the last 2, maybe even 3 cycles. Okay, so there are players coming in, and there are players there now, from Collie to what's that kid, Jalen Sneed. Okay, guys that are struggling to see the field, but heck, they're world beaters when they come to the recruiting rankings. And the guys coming in next year, Bowen, and there's a couple other names out there that just don't come to me right now, but I know that they're high on our list. So I am quite concerned about a pass rush. I am quite concerned about the second level. I think the third level is actually looking the strongest because of some pleasant surprises, a la Jaden Mickey and certainly Morrison. But at safety, I'm not sure who's really going to be behind them. And then wide receivers certainly need to fill out. But as far as the season grade, the reason why I would go with a B-, I feel, is because I think he could have done a better job, again, in those games that he should have won. I think the Ohio State game was a good enough game. Okay, they did certainly good enough. I think Rees did a great job, certainly in the second half of that game. Or was it the first half? I don't remember. It's been too long. But one of the halves, I thought he called a very good game. And maybe the second half that things fell off. But I don't think that they really showed what it is that they were capable of doing. They didn't pull out enough weapons and gimmicks, if you will, from their cupboard. Okay, if Rees is such a state-of-the-art, he's with the times coach, I think he could have showed a little bit more there in that game. Yeah. And he had Buckner, don't forget. Yep. But as far as holding the season together, the middle of the season was great, right?
It was a good stretch run there for a while. I mean, North Carolina, Syracuse, Clemson. I mean, that's a heck of a run.
It was.
And I think that, to his credit, I mean, he beat a top 5 team in Clemson when they were 5 at the time. And that's a quality football program. That's not a program that's, there's a few studs on. No, there's several athletes on that team that they manhandled. And I think that's the show of a guy that can get his players to play at high levels because they have a trust factor and a belief in him. When you're that tight with your players, you can get that out of that. And I think that's why I like him and what I'm seeing. But I think the B- was, there's 2 games you had no business losing. And then the way you lost them. Yeah, the way you lost them just.
The thing about a B- is, don't forget, it is still a little bit above average, right? Yeah. I mean, I choose to see as being an average season. It was slightly above average. And
no, it definitely
one
was.
Of the other things that I felt was decent about it, that the honeymoon ended fast. Yep. I was glad to be, by the second.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good thing too. Over. Yeah, I agree. But, I do like him. I'm a huge fan. I think we got a lot of upside with him. I think I'm excited. I really think there's a lot to be excited about heading forward with this program and where we're at. It's a different dynamic, the world we live in now. This whole transfer thing. I was kind of glad to see that Notre Dame is now looking at non-graduate transfers. They almost have to if they're going to stay competitive. It's just you can't just ignore that and not address it. There's too much talent out there, and it affects things. I mean, you can plug a hole that you've got like that. Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy the way this has altered the college football landscape. It's nuts.
In typical fashion, I think Notre Dame is always a step behind, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Usually.
And I think, and I'd like to hear at least your preliminary thoughts of how you feel Notre Dame is handling the NIL and what you think its outlook for us is on the future.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. I don't think we're ever going to lead the charge in that. It's just not going to be in Notre Dame's DNA to do that. I think as long as they're combining, hey, it's not all NIL. It's NIL right at the moment while you're capable of making that kind of money. But don't forget, your 4-year degree is going to translate into a lot more than that. I just read an article today about Justin Tuck, who's now a director at Goldman Sachs. I mean, that's the kind of stuff, doors, windows that open up to you with that 4-year degree. And I think you know,
and
look,
it
I
doesn't
think
hurt that he played for the New York Giants and was an All-Pro for a few years, right? Okay,
so, yeah, true. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying that he is a Notre Dame kid, so let's, you know, that is what it is. But my point is that I think that combined with the NIL puts us in that playing category of a competitive nature. Now, we're going to lose out to the kid that wants big money. We're not going to have it for him. I just don't think we're going to have it. But by the same
nor
token,
should we.
right? Nor should we. You just don't want to be in that. Yeah, I think I don't know. I'm a little nervous about what's going to happen with college football over the next three years because it's a little too much the Wild West at the moment, and I don't know. It just I'm not sure how this shakes out. But for now, you got to play with the cards that are dealt you, and that's what it is.
This
And
is why I'm a little bit more bearish than you. While I think that if, say, Marcus Freeman were here 5 years ago and before NIL, say, and it was everybody's playing by relatively the same rules, everybody's got a jumbotron, everybody's got state-of-the-art facilities, everybody's competing legitimately for the same players, and the only thing separating it is, say, the weather, the campus, and the stature of the program. I think Notre Dame would stand to be much more competitive now, given the insatiable thirst for the short-term benefit that recruits are currently being confronted with. I think that Notre Dame is at a disadvantage, and you are going to lose a lot of those battles when you're saying to an 18-year-old, hey, you can be, you know, and I'm not terribly familiar with how the whole NIL thing works, but you can be endorsed by, say, some local car dealership to the tune of X amount of dollars here at, say, University of Florida. I hope I'm not defaming them right now. Or Notre Dame, where you're talking about 40 years and you're talking about possibly, you know, saying you can be a part of that dealership, but the money's going to a charity and not to your pocket. I think that unfortunately Notre Dame's going to lose much more than we're going to win.
yeah,
That type of a play.
Yeah. And I think this is where, you know, we'll see where this all shakes out. I mean, I think it's definitely. I just hope that it doesn't, because I don't like the idea of this wild free agency every single year. That just doesn't make sense.
Right.
It's going to lose the branding of the schools. It's going to lose the loyalty. You're going to have one guy do something great for one school, impact, you know, a championship in some sort of way, and then what? He's going to do it at some other school.
Yeah,
and maybe even a third. I mean, this is just nuts. It's
the whole system is likely. I don't know when. I can't really forecast the timeline on this one, but the whole system is likely to go splat at some point.
Yeah, and there's going to be a super conference of 16 teams, and those guys just do it. That is what we're looking at if we're not careful, Hill, and it'll be sooner than later.
Yep.
That's exactly what's going to happen. I think the
and
NCAA
will be people saying, you know what, to heck with it. I'm in
the heck with it
this because my team no longer has any chance, and you get
people
tuning out.
Yep.
You know, so
and I think it'll be interesting. I think it's going to be real interesting to see where Notre Dame falls. Do they go into that super conference, or do they say, you know what, we're going to stay outside of it? We're going to do college athletics, and we want to be the upper echelon of that secondary system.
Well, I think that even if they joined that conference that that super conference that you're talking about right now, unless they were to change their outlook and how they present or how they interface with NIL, I think that there is a risk to basically being the bottom feeder of said conference.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You know, so I do hope that we are worried about nothing. And I hope that Notre Dame does find a way to navigate those really tough waters that has us at a disadvantage, slightly at least, going in, and are able to find and filter out the types of kids that are able to see far enough down the road to where they can kind of put off and delay their gratification, financial gratification, for a few years.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, and that's the message you got to win with and sell it. And look, I mean, at the moment, I think it's working. I mean, he's got a heck of a class coming in if he can keep them all. We'll find out. But boy, that's got to excite you in his first real recruiting class, him bringing in a top 5 class. That's not very often we do that. So a lot of excitement, a lot of build up. It's going to be interesting. Hey, Chris, really thanks for doing this. It was nice of you to hop on short notice like this. And it's
No, it's my
always
pleasure.
great to talk to you. You're an old pro at this, even though you do it once every 5 years. I'll have you on again when Mike and Ed give me the ho heave. I'm too tired tonight to do it. Let's pick some other night.
No, and I'd love to be able to get those guys on. I'm a big fan listening to Ed. I glean a lot from him and Mike as well. So I've been, a loyal follower, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, well, you enjoy it. It's a lot of fun, and it's great. I tried both of them. They couldn't do it today, but in any event, we'll have them on and do another one. Awesome. Great. Thanks, Chris. We've been listening to Dome and Domer, an online conversation about Notre Dame sports from a fan's perspective. For Chris Travers, I'm Mike Brammer. Thanks for listening.